Have you ever wondered why some people carry a sadness that doesn't have a clear name? They smile at the right moments. They work hard. They take responsibility. But if you look closer, you'll notice something heavy behind their eyes. Maybe you've even felt it yourself, an invisible exhaustion. An emptiness inside you that no amount of looking fine on the outside can really cover. I call that the echo of childhood. Because those first years of life leave deeper marks than we realize. Sometimes we don't even remember the memories themselves. But our bodies, our minds, and the way we love are still shaped by them. And often, what we carry isn't just a memory, it's the tragedy of a ruined childhood. I know the word tragedy sounds heavy. But imagine this. A child is supposed to grow in a garden filled with safety, love, and open arms. Instead, the soil is dry, the ground is cracked, there isn't enough light or water. The child still grows, of course, but twisted, straining in every direction just to survive. By adulthood, the body looks steady, but the soul carries breaks and scars that never healed. Have you ever felt like that tree? Outwardly alive, working, showing up, but inwardly carrying a part of yourself that was never nurtured? In my work as a therapist, I meet so many people like this. They don't usually come to me saying, "Something was wrong with my childhood." They come because they can't trust people, or they live with constant anxiety, or relationships always feel fragile, or they spend their whole lives pleasing others without knowing why. And when we dig deeper, the roots aren't in the present, they're in those early years. When a child cried but no one came, when their voice was ignored, or when they were told their feelings were too much. Science confirms what many of us feel deep down. A child's brain develops most rapidly in the first years of life. Every gentle word, every hug, every moment of care becomes a neural imprint. And the opposite is true as well. Every time they're dismissed, ignored, or yelled at, the brain forms different imprints: vigilance, fear, and the belief that, "I'm not enough." I want you to think back to a small childhood memory. Maybe you cried and no one comforted you. Maybe you proudly showed something you made, only to be brushed aside. Maybe you heard phrases like, "Stop whining," or, "You're too old to cry." They sound harmless to adults. But to a child, they can mean, "Your feelings don't matter. You're a burden," and repeated often enough, those messages harden into lifelong beliefs. Does that sound familiar? Growing up, maybe you tried to never inconvenience anyone. Maybe you chased perfection so people would notice you. Or maybe you withdrew and stayed quiet, believing no one cared what you had to say. That's not just your personality. That's the imprint of childhood. But let me be clear. Not everyone with a difficult childhood ends up broken or unhappy. Humans are astonishingly adaptive. Some people grow like a tree breaking through barren ground, still reaching for the light. But even then, the scars remain. A tall tree can still have a bent trunk, twisted branches, marks that never fully fade. And people are the same. One of the hardest things about carrying childhood wounds is how invisible they are. If you break your arm, everyone sees the cast. People sign it, ask how you're doing, offer help. But when your heart breaks in childhood, when love is scarce and safety is conditional, there's no cast for the soul. So you learn to hide it. You even tell yourself, "I'm fine. That's in the past. I'm over it." But the body remembers. It shows up in the way your chest tightens when someone raises their voice, in the unease you feel when everything is too quiet, because peace feels foreign, in the suspicion you carry when someone is kind to you, because unconditional love was never familiar. That's the tragedy of a ruined childhood. It doesn't just live in the past. It follows you, quietly, every day. And maybe the most heartbreaking part is this: children rarely blame their parents. They don't think, "My mom or dad couldn't give me love." They think, "I must not be lovable." That innocent logic turns into a shadow that follows them into adulthood. Have you ever asked yourself, "Why do I never feel enough? Why do I work twice as hard just to be accepted? Why does love make me anxious instead of safe?" The answers often don't live in the present, but in the inner child, still living inside you: the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 10-year-old who never got comfort, who never believed they deserved love. And if you're hearing this and recognizing yourself, I want you to know, you are not weak. What you've been through isn't proof that you're broken, it's proof that you survived. You endured years without the safety every child deserves. And yet here you are, still longing for love, still capable of growth. To me, that alone is a miracle. Sometimes we think that in order to change our lives, We need a big push, a dramatic turning point. Like switching jobs, moving to a new city, or starting a brand new relationship. But after years of working in psychology, I've realized something important. It's the small habits, repeated every single day, that quietly shape the entire course of our lives. I once worked with a client, a woman in her 30s, who came to me feeling stuck. She said, "I don't feel joy anymore. My job is fine, my family is fine, but inside, I feel empty." So we sat together and looked at her daily rhythm. And what did we find? A loop that looked the same. Day after day. Work, home, dinner, scrolling on her phone until late. Then sleep. There was nothing wrong with her routine. But she had never stopped to ask herself, what actually makes me feel alive? Now I want you to imagine this. What if, each day, you added just one small moment, 5 minutes walking outside, 10 minutes of journaling your messy thoughts, or a quick phone call to an old friend? What do you think would happen? Exactly. You don't have to change your whole world overnight. You just need to plant one new seed inside your old routine. And over time, that seed grows into real transformation. There's a well-known study in psychology about what's called the ripple effect. When you change one small behavior, it spreads into other areas of your life. For example, you start going to bed an hour earlier. That means you wake up earlier, feel more energized, your mood improves, and suddenly your relationships get better too. One small shift can create a chain reaction. Now, I know what you might be thinking, that sounds nice. But it's hard to do. And you're right, I've seen so many people start with determination, then give up before they see results. That's normal. The brain loves what's familiar, it always pulls us back into our old loops. But when you understand this, you stop blaming yourself. You realize that change isn't about speed, it's about patience. It's not a sprint, it's a long journey. Have you ever sat on a bus or a train, looked out the window, and thought, where am I even going? Is this really the direction I want for my life? I know I have, and many of my clients have too. Those rare moments of questioning are powerful, because the question itself matters more than the answer at first. Asking it opens the door to change. Another client of mine struggled with procrastination. Every day he promised himself he would work out, learn a new skill, get his life together, but instead, he stayed up late playing video games. When I asked him why, he said, "Because I think I have to change everything all at once. An hour of exercise, 2 hours of study, a whole long checklist?" And I told him, no, just start with 5 minutes. Do 5 push-ups, read 1 page, that's all. Months later, those 5 minutes had turned into 30. And that 1 page had become an entire book. He had created a new loop, a loop that nurtured growth instead of holding him back. You see, our lives are built on repetition. But repetition does not mean meaningless. Think of your breath. You inhale and exhale thousands of times a day. It's the simplest, most repetitive action there is, and yet, it's the very thing that keeps you alive. So the real question is, within your daily loops, what seeds are you planting? Seeds of exhaustion and autopilot? Or seeds of mindfulness and choice? Take a moment to look back at your day. From morning to night, did you give yourself even one moment of true presence? Did you ever just sit? Without doing, without trying, just breathing, just being? If not, I want to invite you to try. You might be surprised to discover that change doesn't always come from adding more, but from daring to subtract, from letting go of noise, of pressure, of what isn't necessary. And if you're listening to me right now, I believe there's already a part of you that wants to break free from an empty loop. You may not know exactly where to start, and that's okay. What matters is that you've woken up enough to ask the question. You've listened, and that, my friend, is the very first step toward real change. There's something interesting I've often noticed about adults. The older we get, the less permission we give ourselves to be curious. When we were children, we asked, why? All the time. Why is the sky blue? Why do flowers bloom and then fade? Why are grown-ups sad? But as we step into adulthood, we get pulled into endless cycles of responsibility, work, bills, family, and that question, that why, slowly disappears. But have you ever noticed that curiosity is the very thing that makes life feel alive? When a person loses curiosity, they also lose the simple joy woven into everyday life. I often tell my clients, if you can't change everything right now, start by changing the questions you ask. Instead of, what do I have to do? Try asking, what if I tried just one small new thing? I remember a colleague once telling me about his morning commute. He'd been taking the same road to work for years. One day, on a whim, he turned down a different street. On that street, he discovered a tiny cafe, filled with the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee. He stopped, sat down, and from then on, that street and that cafe became part of his new routine. Just a small spark of curiosity opened up space for him to breathe. To feel like he was living, not just existing. Have you ever given yourself permission to try something that's small? Maybe it's just switching your desk around, walking without headphones, or offering a smile to a stranger. These little shifts may seem insignificant, but sometimes, they're the very sparks that wake your soul back up. This reminds me of a concept in psychology called mindfulness. It may sound academic, but really, it's very simple: being fully present in the moment. When you drink tea, actually drink it. Notice the aroma, the warmth, the subtle bitterness on your tongue. When you talk to someone, really look into their eyes. Listen without rushing to plan your reply. These experiences may not change the outer routine, but they transform the way you show up inside it. And sometimes, that's the most important change of all. After years of conversations with hundreds of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I've realized something. Most of us don't actually fear routine, we fear the feeling of being stuck inside it. And the way out isn't always to break everything apart. Sometimes, it's simply to change our relationship with the routine. You can turn a routine into a ritual, from a dull habit into a meaningful practice. For example, instead of rushing through breakfast, you give yourself 10 minutes by the window, soaking in the morning light while sipping your coffee. Or instead of seeing exercise as a dreaded obligation, you turn it into a moment to reconnect with your body, to feel your heartbeat, your breath. It's the same loop, but the feeling is entirely different. You might be wondering, so where's the line between accepting a routine and changing it? There isn't one simple answer. But I believe this: as long as your routine still holds life and joy, you're in the right place. But when all you feel is heaviness and fatigue, that's your sign it's time to step onto a new path. So I want you to imagine this: 10 years from now. If your life looked exactly like it does today, would you feel content? If the answer is yes, then keep nurturing the loop you're in. But if the answer is no, let today be your reminder. You have the right to plant a new seed, even if it begins with the smallest change. There's something I always remind the people I work with. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to truly start living. So many people think, when I have a more stable job, when I make enough money, when I lose those 5 pounds, when I find the right partner, then I'll finally be happy. But the truth is, if you keep waiting, you end up losing the entire journey. I once met a man in his 40s. On paper, he had almost everything: a solid career, a loving family. But when we talked, he admitted, "I feel like I missed my youth. I kept waiting until I finished this project, until I achieved that goal, before I allowed myself to enjoy life. And in the end, there was always another someday to wait for." He lived inside a loop of success, but he never felt it was enough. Have you ever found yourself in that same situation? Chasing a distant finish line, while forgetting the steps right beneath your feet? From a psychological perspective, our brains have a tendency to delay happiness. We tie joy to some condition in the future. But the longer we wait, the more we reinforce the cycle of exhaustion. And often, breaking free doesn't require a massive life change, it just requires giving yourself permission to enjoy what's already here. Think about a simple morning. You wake up, sunlight spills through the window. A gentle breeze brushes past. Instead of rushing straight into your to-do list, pause for just a few seconds. Breathe in the air, hear the birds, wrap your hand around a cool glass of water. When you give small moments their value, they become anchors that keep you grounded in the middle of a busy life. Over the years, I've realized this: life isn't measured by grand achievements, it's measured by how we live the ordinary moments. Successful people and happy people aren't always different in what they accomplish, but in how they experience each day. I remember a young client in his early 20s who once said to me, "I'm afraid my whole life will just be work, eat, sleep, and repeat forever." So I asked him, if that's the case, what would you want each day to look like so it doesn't feel meaningless? He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I want each day to have at least one thing that makes me feel alive. Maybe learning something new, or just laughing hard with my friends. Simple, right? But those little things transformed his routine into something full of life. Maybe you've had wishes like that too. They're not always big goals. Sometimes it's just coming home after a long day and knowing someone's waiting for you. Sometimes it's the quiet relief of finishing something you've been putting off. And sometimes it's simply giving yourself one evening to rest without trying to please anyone else. See, routine itself isn't the problem. It only becomes a burden when we live in it unconsciously. But if we place our heart into it, if we choose to make it meaningful, then even the most ordinary days can become unforgettable ones. And maybe the most important message I want to leave with you today is this. We can't go back and rewrite our childhood. But we can choose how we live the rest of our lives. I want you to imagine this. You're standing in front of a child who is really just your younger self. Maybe it's a 7-year-old boy sitting quietly in the corner of a room. Or a 10-year-old girl staring out the window, waiting for someone to come home. When you look into that child's eyes, can you see the longing to be loved, to be understood? Wouldn't you want to walk over, kneel down, and hold that child close? That is exactly the work we must do for ourselves, whether we're 20, 30, or 50, to become the person our inner child once needed, to offer ourselves the patience, the kindness, and the love we didn't always receive back then. I've seen people begin this journey in small but powerful ways. Writing a letter to their younger self, going to therapy to learn how to let go, or simply speaking the words out loud, "It wasn't my fault. I deserve to be loved." It sounds simple, but sometimes those words carry the power to unlock years of pain. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and relearn. But I like to think of it in a simpler way. The human heart always has room for healing. It's never too late to learn how to trust, to love, and to feel safe in your own skin. And you know, wounds don't only bring darkness. I've noticed that people who grew up with emptiness often become the ones who listen most deeply. They cry more easily at stories. They empathize with the pain of others, and because of that, their light may not be loud, but it is steady. Do you see it? That very sensitivity, that depth of vision, can become your gift to the world. Because when you know what absence feels like, you long to offer presence. When you know silence, you want to listen more. And when you've been that small child in a dark room, you burn with the desire to light the way for someone else. That is not weakness, that is strength, a strength forged out of broken pieces, raw, real, and deeply human. So if you're watching this and you see yourself in these words, please remember, you are not alone. Across the world, there are countless people learning to heal old wounds, slowly becoming the person who lifts themselves up. And you can too. Start small, one slow breath, one kind word to yourself, one moment where you dare to lift your head and believe, I am not my wounds. I am the one writing the next chapter. Because life is never defined by its beginning. It's defined by how we continue, by what we choose to create from the ruins. And sometimes, the people who started in the darkest places are the ones who carry the brightest light. Do you see it? That light is already within you. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this video. If you recognized yourself in these stories, remember you are not alone on this journey. We're all learning how to heal, one step at a time. If you'd like to keep walking this path together and hear more conversations like this, don't forget to subscribe, so we can meet again in the next video. Take care of yourself, be gentle with your own heart, and I'll see you soon. Wishing you a peaceful day.